does freedom mean? Because yesterday was Independence Day. Now, I was not born American. I'm American by choice. I came to the United States in 1979 because I married an American. I met the father of my children when he was doing research on viruses in Malaysia. And I came to this country on July 9th of 1979. So I adopted the country as my own. And for many years, I carried a green card, being an immigrant wife. You know how this little card or this little piece of paper can change your whole life or your outlook of life? It's a small piece of paper. Actually, it was a green card about the size of your credit card. I went back to Malaysia, my home country, to visit many times. By the time I have children, my children were of course naturalized citizens of America because they were born in the United States. Their father is an American citizen. I was at the time an immigrant wife with a green card, and do you know what they say on the green card? You've heard of the green card, right? It says you are a resident alien. I've never been branded an alien before. So I was a resident alien in this country. And so for many years, I lived as a resident alien. I did not have the right to vote. And all this time, I would say, I'm going to go home and visit mom. I'm going to go home and visit my relatives. And so when I would take my babies, children at the time, I would go to Malaysia. At the airport, I have to go to passport control. And this time, I have to go through 2 lines. My babies, my children were not on my passport because they were Americans. They are Americans, and I was not. I carried a red-colored Malaysian passport. My children carried a blue passport. They had their individual passports. So I would go through the line first to clear customs as a Malaysian coming home to Malaysia. And then I have to walk my children through foreign passport control as foreigners visiting Malaysia. So that went on for a long time until I decided I have to make a choice. Malaysia was where I was born. America is where I will die. I was born Malaysian, I will die American. And how does that affect my life? I say to myself. Well, it was very simple. I thought about it one day. I made a choice to come and live in this country. I made a choice to have children born in this country. If Malaysia, God forbid, should go to war with the United States, which side will I stand? Will I stand by the country where I was born, or would I stand by the country where I have chosen to make my life? And it was very easy. There were 2 very clear reasons. I looked at my children. I would choose to be where my children would be. At that time, they were very young. It was my duty to protect them. So it was a very easy choice. And I decided, if I'm going to live in this country, I'm going to have a say in it. It may not seem like a lot to be able to exercise the freedom to vote, but for me it was a big deal. So I applied to become a naturalized citizen. So the status shifting from being a resident alien That's a terrible term, a resident alien. I don't know what the green cards look like now. I wish I'd taken a photograph of the green card I had. It simply says Chin Kui Tai Chin at that time. Kui Tai Chin, resident alien. I thought about, wow, 2 little words. But what does that tell you? It simply, to me, it tells me you can stay here, but you never be accepted. You stay here by marriage, but you never be one of us. So I thought, wow, how would my children feel they grow up and say, my mother is a resident alien? She's an alien. She's not one of us. How horrible would that be? At that time, I didn't think about it, but this morning it just came to me, to my mind. The word alien is so horrible. Who would like to be alienated? Raise your hand. Who would elect to apply to be an alien? I didn't know that when I applied for residency as an immigrant wife that I would be branded as an alien. And so there I was, an alien. So the small act of making the application to be a United States resident, to be a United States citizen was a big deal. So the process went through, and I remember the day came. I had to take a test. We actually have to take a test. Now, those of you who were born in America, you didn't have to take a test to have the right to live here. I did. I thought, what if I flunk? I mean, the good luck is I'm a pretty good test taker. Probably aced the test, I don't know. They never gave me back my score. And I must have passed the test because they said, okay, by such and such date, you are to appear in a court in Cleveland, Ohio. I lived in the state of Ohio. And you will join several other immigrant people or resident aliens to convert your status to be an American citizen. Wow. I remember the husband then had no time to join me for such a massive event in my life. It was nothing, according to him. My late father-in-law drove me there because I didn't have a car. It was an hour's drive. And he sat through the whole thing with me. It was very interesting because that day, my name changed. The judge said, would you like to make any changes to your name? And I know at that moment, my last name should remain the same as my children's because I have elected to be their mother. But I was not going to give up my family name, which is Chin. But I know that in America's computerized system, you can only put so many words to include your name. So at that moment, I said, yes, there is a change. The words Kui Tai they were 2 words, and it has a meaning. By itself, people like to shorten your name. Can I call you Kui or can I call you Tai? I say, no, you may not, because it changes the meaning of my name. You either say Kui Tai or you don't call me anything at all, and I don't answer to whistles. So I decided to merge the 2 words Kui Tai into 1 word. And so that day my name changed to be Kui Tai Chin, and then Neil to honor my children. And after I became unmarried to the father of my children, I decided to keep the name because it is to honor the status and the circumstance at that moment. When I changed my name, I was married to a Neil. I was mother to 2 little Neils, and therefore Neil should be a part of my identity. And so this whole notion of how we name certain things and situations change our lives in bigger ways than we can imagine. I became Kui Tai Chin Neil. On the same day, before the judge in the court, I had a choice to maintain dual citizenship. I can remain Malaysian and American. I could have kept both citizenships. And I thought, well, that defeats the whole purpose. If I'm Malaysian and American, what will I do if Malaysia goes to war with America? That was my acid test. Where would I stand? Do you chop me in half? This half is Malaysian and that half is American? No, I decided it was with just super clarity in that one of those few defining moments. I thought, no. I said, I am choosing to be American today. At that moment, I have to surrender my Malaysian passport. I said, I believe I cannot serve two masters. And I choose one because I have the power to choose. It's only geography. It's only, in the big scheme of life, at the end of this life, where do we go? Do we become a citizen of this part of the universe, or the 9th galaxy, or the 28th galaxy? We don't know. It's only geography. It's not important. And so at that moment, I realized, very small shift, getting rid of the resident alien status, making a choice to be American. Seems very small to some people. It has changed my entire life, my style of living, and who I am, and what I do, and what I believe in. Not long afterwards, I got myself a blue United States passport. Those of you who don't live in the US, we actually have a very beautiful blue passport. Now I have the same color passport as my children. And here is the emotional transition. All this is step by step. I didn't think about it. This is what I want to do, blah, blah, blah. But the defining moment came as I took my children back to visit my mother. And at this time, I don't have to go through 2 lines. I only have to go through 1. Now I'm a foreign passport holder. I'm dragging 2 little kids through the line. I'm a foreign passport holder. What does that mean? The nice thing is my kids were with me all the time. I didn't have to, go through here and go through there. And we walked past, and I clearly remember the passport control officer looked at me and looked at my children, who obviously did not look 100% Chinese. It's very obvious. And he kind of looked at me. Maybe it was my imagination, but I felt like he was judging me. I felt like, you are a traitor. Because he looked at me, you American? And I said for the first time in my life, yes, I'm American. And he kind of looked at me and frowned a little bit and looked at the children, and he shook his head and stamped my passport. A very small gesture. Didn't say any more. He looked at me and he shook his head in disapproval, and he let me pass through. Now I am a foreign passport holder. Now I'm coming back into the country where I was born and raised, where my family members are, where my mother was still at the time, and all my friends that I grew up with. And all of a sudden, they didn't call me a resident alien. But at that moment, I've been disowned. One look. So very interesting. So I had a very pleasant visit. Didn't think anything about it. The minute you get out of the airport and you're with your family, the first thing we do is what we're going to eat. And we got into this eating frenzy, and all things were forgotten. And so we visited and ate and visited some more until the day I left. And now I have to go through passport control to leave the Kuala Lumpur airport. And the passport officer say, where are you going? You're American. I say, yes, I'm American. Where are you going? Another defining moment, I looked at him and I smiled and I said, I'm going home. So the word home, the word freedom, is all in our minds, actually. It's all in our hearts. Where do you, I'd say home is where you park your stuff, right? But really home is where you park your heart. In Chinese, heart is not the physical pumping organ. Heart is here. Heart is heart and mind consciousness, is where you put yourself physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And so I've spent most of my life working with people who have myriad emotional problems, and they are unhappy. People are unhappy because of bad relationships. It all boils down to bad relationships. When you don't have a good relationship either with yourself, with your family, or with your spouses, or with your friends or your colleagues, you're in trouble, right? That's where all the trouble is when you have disharmonious relationships. Then you are creating within yourself prisons. True freedom is when nobody owns you. True freedom is not about lighting firecrackers and making a lot of noise. To me, true freedom is quiet. True freedom is quiet and is peaceful. It's knowing that you are free, no matter where you are. Those of you who may have read Viktor Frankl's book, you know, the psychiatrist who was in Auschwitz, and they stripped him of all human dignity, put him naked in a cell where he ate and pooped in the same place, and he survived. And people say, how do you do it? And he said something profound, something to the effect of, they may take away all my liberties, but they do not take away my freedom, because my freedom belongs to me. The freedom that we talk about is your freedom of spirit. When your spirit is truly free, then nobody can own you. I look back now to that moment when that custom officer, I'm sure it was my imagination, when he looked at me and shook his head. I was scared myself, wondering if I made a big choice that was a good choice. I was scared, and I thought he was judging me. But today, if he looked at me, I don't care what his face looks like. Doesn't faze me one bit, because I know who I am, because I trust the choice I make. And more importantly, I trust that I am fully responsible for the choice I make. If I don't have to rely on someone to be responsible for what I do, because I am responsible for what I do, then I don't owe anybody anything. I don't have to blame people for things I don't feel good about, because if I don't like it, I can change it. That's real freedom. And I know that it is not politically correct to do this. Long time ago, when I was new in practice, I had an African-American client. She was a very high-ranking administrator in a very large hospital setting. When she's on duty, the choices she makes affects 1,000 staff members. And yet she was so scared she wouldn't go on a cruise, because she was afraid the 200 ladies from her church who will go on the cruise would judge her. This is just summarizing the big deal. So I say, excuse me, you mean you are scared of 200 people you don't even know that you're going on this cruise with, and that's why you're not going? And yet when you are on duty, that you make decisions that affect the lives of so many patients and so many staff members. So I said, I thought in America slavery ended a long time ago. Why are you still carrying it? So we become the prison warden of our own selves, don't you think? We create boxes to keep ourselves in, to be afraid. We sometimes don't do things we feel we should be doing because we're scared. Sometimes when you see someone in the playground when we were kids and people bullying other kids, and we quietly walk away. And I remember being with a group, they were having this meeting talking about changing the world and all this big discussion. And then one woman said, well, I was driving by this part of Dallas and I saw all these homeless people living under the bridge and blah, blah, blah. And they were talking about changing the world. So I said, may I ask a very small question? What do you think you could have done that moment when you saw these homeless people under the bridge and you felt a tinge of compassion? Instead of spending all this energy at a fancy meeting talking about it, what is one small thing you could have done that day? Perhaps you could turn around to the 7-Eleven and bought 2 cases of water and just go back there and drop them off. If you feel bad about it, do something about it, right? Instead of talk about it. I know that my neighbor is highly political and Steve likes to listen to politics and whatnot. For me, my politics is very simple. We don't have to go out and make big fireworks. The firecracker begins at home. What is one small thing that each one of us can do today after this chat that can make a positive effect on the world that we live in? One small thing. It might be in Hong Kong, it might be in Australia, it might be in Malaysia, it might be in Atlanta. We are in all different parts of the world. But there's one thing that is common amongst all of us. We're all in the same energy. When we leave this world, we're all going to be in the same energy, because energy is energy. Right now, each one of us is energy manifested in whatever form that you're in, because that energy never changes. You can eat more, you can eat less. You can weigh more, you can weigh less. You can change the color of your hair, the length of your skirt. You can change all these extraneous things. But what you cannot change is that inner essence that's you. I heard a lecture this week with a monk, and he talks about the water. He says the water is just the energy in the water. You look at the ocean when it's calm, it's just a sea of water. And then something stirs the water. The water gets upset and it turns into this gigantic wave. It rises up, it roars, it makes this huge big fuss, and then it slaps itself on the shore and it goes, and you know what? It becomes water again. Some of the water may have evaporated up to the clouds, and then it gets stored up there in the clouds until one day when the conditions are right, it comes back into the ocean as rain, right? And the ocean is calm again until something stirs it and boom, the waves come again. Some are little ripples, some are very big waves. But in the end, the energy never changes. We are all energy. So we just have to make the choice where to park the energy.
that's my little thought today.
I heard a song a long time ago, and the words go like, freedom isn't free. There is a price. There is a sacrifice. Freedom is a choice. So with choice comes responsibility. And I think the moment we can take responsibility for our actions, that's the moment you're free. And in the context of the work that we do as catalysts for change, that's our new term, as catalysts for change, we help people see that if we don't stop giving the responsibility of our ill-being to someone else, we would never have the freedom to be free from all those ailments, because it's somebody else's fault that you're poor. It's somebody else's fault that you are not so pretty. It's somebody else's fault that you didn't get the job promotion. It's somebody else's fault. When we keep on laying on that responsibility for someone else, then we have no power to change. Right? We have no power to change. So freedom is taking back your own power to make choices for yourself. As a health educator for years, we talk about, well, for a long time we were watching an old movie, and Steve said, I said, gosh, she's smoking. and Steve says, well, back then they didn't know smoking was bad for you, and people would smoke. It was Demi Moore in the movie, was in the 60s. She was smoking away, and it took public health education at least 50 years to beat at it until today. It's not so cool to smoke in public. Back in the day it was very fashionable to smoke. Right? I didn't understand that because I tried it. It tastes terrible. I think my first attempt at smoking, I was very cool. I just graduated from London, and a friend gave me a very expensive leather Pierre Cardin cigarette holder. And so I would buy these very expensive designer cigarettes. Did you know not? They have designer cigarettes, and they come in beautiful colors, kind of like they're blues and purples and pinks and yellows, and then they have gold tips, foil tips. So I've got this very expensive leather Pierre Cardin cigarette holder with all these pretty cigarettes inside with pretty colors and gold tips. It was very cool. Until I took a smoke. Oh God, I said, why do people do this? It tastes terrible and makes my fingers smell and makes my hair smell. Why do people smoke? I just left it on my desk. It's not so cool. Never mind the status symbol. I said, gosh, if I have to smoke this horrible tasting thing to look cool, maybe I'd rather be not so cool. But it did take a lot of efforts by public health educators, a lot of years, and we beat our heads against the wall, and we try to get it in the schools to teach kids it's a bad thing to smoke, and so on, a lot of work, until today in 2020 people still smoke by choice, but it's not so cool anymore. Now I see more and more people who want to come to me and they want to quit smoking. I said, why do you want to quit? You like smoking. Your body may die if you quit smoking. I had once a surgeon asked me, he wants to quit smoking. He was 60 some years old. I said, how long have you been smoking? He's been smoking for 50 years. I said, why do you want to quit? And he said, well, I don't want to die of lung cancer and people come to my funeral and laugh at me. Here I am, a doctor, and I died of lung cancer because I smoked. But I said, so every day you smoke. For the last 50 years, you know you shouldn't smoke, and yet you smoke. So he said, yeah, so can you help me quit? How much does it cost? Back in the days, I would charge $5,000 for a 10-hour protocol. And I said, well, $5,000, you have up to 10 hours with me. He said, what if I quit in 5 minutes? I said, it's still $5,000. He goes, well, that's not fair. I said, well, I'll tell you what, if you open my body and you're looking for a big mess and you find a small mess, are you going to give me a refund? And he looked at me, he said, oh, you're good. I said, I know. So people make choices and people make excuses. I think the day we stop making excuses for our bad behavior, we know inside everybody has a little voice that tells us you shouldn't have eaten that extra cookie on the table. Everybody has a little voice of conscience that tell us we're doing something we're not supposed to do. And then we go on and we do it. And guess what? We are so good at not taking responsibility. We're so good at not being free. We're so good at throwing away our freedom every day in every way, in small ways, medium-sized ways, and big ways. We throw away our freedom by blaming other people. So if we can just take a moment and say, if I want to be free, what responsibility can I take? What small piece of responsibility have I taken? If all it takes today doesn't have to be big, all it takes is put on my mask when I go out. I've done something good. I used to tell clients, if you want to feel successful, there's one small thing you can do every day and you will feel successful. Make your bed. When you get out of bed, everybody sleeps in a bed pretty much these days unless you sleep on the street. And you know, I was very impressed when I visited Hong Kong in 2017. We stay in this part of town in this hotel. In order to get to the street on the other side to go where the shops are, so Steve and I would go there and walk across the street and get something to eat in the shops. And we passed the underground place where you cross the street. And there was this guy who was a homeless guy. And he has his own little space there where he slept every night. But he kept it very clean and very tidy. I could tell that was his home. Things were folded and they were clean. I was pretty amazed that he was grateful that he was not evicted by the authorities. I'm sure that the police will keep a blind eye because he lives there. It's evident he lives there. He's got everything he owned in that little space, but it was tidy. So if we just make our beds every day, we've done something good towards freedom, right? So if you think about the lyrics, freedom isn't free, but every little thing we do contributes to the freedom of spirit, the freedom of our minds, freedom from negative thoughts, freedom from blaming other people. And if freedom translates to responsibility, so if every day we do something that we can be responsible for, we work towards freedom. One thing that I think today's children are lacking, parents don't give enough training to their children to teach them how to take responsibility for things. I mean, those of us who are as old as I am or older will remember the days where we have to do chores for pocket money, right? I mean, I didn't grow up thinking, oh, that's something nice in the shop, I want that. I didn't kind of shake my mother's skirt and say, mommy, I want that. It was never in our vocabulary. If you want it, the better question to ask, how can I earn it? You see something you want, you go, mommy, what can I do to earn it? I'll get my little notebook out. Okay, I have to wash the dishes for the next 10 days. I have to clean up the leaves in the yard. I have to pull the weeds. I have to do this. I have this whole list until I can chalk out $5 worth to buy whatever it is I want. And you know, at the end of the day, when I get to buy that because I've earned it, it is so wonderful and I value it so much. But now it's easy. Mommy, I want that. Oh, get this. Nowadays, you know, they have their own credit card. They can go on Amazon and buy whatever they want.
They never even see the money, the kids today. I mean, kids in middle school, my granddaughter is 13 years old. All her friends and her have iPhones. I don't have an iPhone. Right? Not because I can't afford one, it's because I choose not to have one. But I know they didn't earn that iPhone. So we get so dependent on things, and the more we have, the less freedom we have, because we're so attached to things. So each in our own little corners, we have small freedoms, we have large freedom, but freedom is freedom. And I think if we feel that we need other people to take responsibility for our actions, then we are willingly giving that freedom away. Most people can't even see that. If we don't speak up and we don't speak out, then we are knowingly giving that freedom away. But I've always known that nothing is free. Back in the day, it was kind of a pun when I was doing a lot of research work in school lunch programs. I would have a t-shirt that says no free lunch. Because nothing is free. One good thing I learned from my mother is that there's no free lunch. You must earn it, you must pay for it, and you must take responsibility for it. Then you are free. You know, I grew up in a generation where women have husbands chosen for them, and many of the friends I grew up with, their choice is to go to college and get a degree called MRS. Is to go find a husband and expect that after that the husband will take care of all your financial needs and all your other needs, and all you have to do is, and there's this joke, I wear this because this is a Chinese jade bangle that belonged to my mother, and back in the day only very wealthy people had it. Well, we are nothing but very wealthy people, but ladies would save up their money to buy one because it's an important piece of your identity. And all doctors' wives wear one of these very expensive. This is not one of those super feature, very expensive ones. This is just an ordinary bracelet, but all doctors' wives have it. It's a symbol that now I have achieved freedom because I've got a husband who's going to work to take care of me the rest of my life. If we have to depend on someone for our livelihood, if we have to depend on someone to blame when we don't make good choices, if we have to say, well, I'm this way because my parents didn't give me a choice, my husband didn't give me a choice, and I couldn't do anything about it, then we are really ruined, screwed, so to speak, because we can't do anything. We become totally disempowered. If freedom is doing exactly how you do what you want to do, and if you were morally challenged like Hitler, it can be a monster. Right? Didn't he do what he wanted to do? Was he a good leader? Yeah, if by definition of good leadership is to have an influence on people and get people to follow you, did he do that? Yeah. But there's one thing that's flawed. He was morally challenged and he did not take responsibility for his actions. Freedom without responsibility is dangerous. Freedom must always go hand in hand with responsibility. For those of us in the health world, first do no harm, and then the ethic is to go beyond first do no harm, is to what can you do to promote goodness. That's what health promotion is all about. What can we do to spread a pandemic of good health? Just like the virus can spread a pandemic of ill health, there's got to be something, because the world is always in balance of yin and yang. If there is this tiny little particle that can cause such great havoc in the world,
There's got to be an equally powerful something that's going to cause an equally big amount of goodness in the world, and we have to each figure out a way. If not, have a wonderful week. Thank you, and we'll meet again next week. Look at these flowers from my garden. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. See you next week.